Hi, it's Chrissy with Late to Finance MD. I'm a pediatrician and I paid off $209,163.49 worth of student loans for medical school over the course of 3 years on a salary that averaged about $130K. So I'm here to talk about finance, but I'm in medicine. And this is not financial advice, it's not medical advice, this is just entertainment and education. So with that, I am here to talk about finances in residency. If you saw my first poorly done but first video, it was about finances in medical school, and so I'm following that up by the next step, which is residency. My first tip is to live like a resident. So what does living like a resident entail, and why is it such a popular phrase? So it's basically just like living like a medical student but with a salary. So you're going to be working, like 80 hours a week or more. Just don't tell them in duty hours. You are going to be making money, good money. So the average salary of probably the average American household. But you're going to be working so much that it's way less than you should be making, but it's still a nice salary. I lived right across from a Target when I was in residency, and I would go in for the essentials, food that I needed or whatever, and would come out with like, oh, I need a new sports bra. Obviously, I need some new workout pants because it's just so easy to shop there. So just minding your shopping and minding that kind of emotional shopping that you might do because you're finally out in the sunlight, you're finally out of the hospital, and you can get a quick dopamine hit by buying these little things that kind of make you feel happy in the moment. So in my first a year and a half of residency, I didn't pay attention to finances, paid the minimum on my loans, as I should, because I was, still in that public service loan forgiveness possible period. But I was just kind of, going to TJ Maxx and buying this and that, things that made me feel good, and not really pay attention to money. And there's a sharp contrast to when I did understand about money and really wanted to start saving and having an emergency fund and having that, having money available just in case something came up. At that time, I think I remember being at a TJ Maxx when I was listening to a podcast about spending money, and it was just like, money, this is not your friend. These things you're buying they're not gonna make you feel better. And I just remember getting to my car and being like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy. I've been doing this for so long, just buying things that I don't necessarily need, but I really want, that I've convinced myself are needs. So trying to limit that in residency, actually like sticking to a budget, having a budget where you are, giving yourself like entertainment allowances and things like that. In residency, they try to feed you a lot. You'll probably have a meal plan. You will of course get pizza at every turn, every event, every conference. They're gonna give you pizza. Hopefully they'll actually add a salad in too, so you're not just eating pizza every day. But after I became financially aware, I realized that there's a lot of free food around, and I did not need to spend as much in that grocery budget that I had allotted myself. So really trying to find ways to decrease those big expenses is a good thing. You're in the hospital so much that your utilities might not be as high as they could be otherwise, but trying to turn off lights and do things, unplugging appliances can help too. But every little bit counts when you're in residency and you're not making the amount you're going to make, and you're kind of feeling like you deserve a certain amount of improvement in life because you do have a salary now. The next tip is to not buy a house, and this is apparently very hard for some people. I really never wanted to be a homeowner until all of a sudden I found myself looking for one. I'll talk about that at some point, but buying a house in residency is not a great idea. You might have gone to undergrad at the same place and then matched in residency at the same place, and this is the area you want to be in and everything's great, but sometimes your dreams change and if, you went in thinking, I'm going to work in this outpatient clinic and it's going to be great, just like my father did or whatever. In the case you get captivated by some other kind of specialty that could be better served doing a fellowship at some other, in some other state, at some other institution, you're going to have bought a house that you've had for like 3, 5, 7 years, whatever kind of, if you're a surgeon, whatever length of residency you do, and eventually you have to sell it. That's a hassle. You're trying to sell a house before 7 years, and that's pretty short term, then you might not recoup any costs, and there might be no, you might actually even lose money on the house. So really waiting until you get your attending job, and you know where you're going to be, and then even waiting a couple of years after that, because even your first job as an attending might not be your last. For 3 years, I was commuting about 45 minutes to an hour with traffic, but it was a long commute, but I was pretty committed to living where I was living. I was with my mother again at that time, and I just wanted to be in this area, so I was willing to commute. And then when I got the job that I have currently, which is maybe my forever job, it's 5 minutes away from the area that I wanted to be in. I finally, after 6 years of being in my hometown and in the area I wanted to live in, finally bought a house. So I would say give it some time. Don't think you're throwing away money on rent. That's not a thing. You're paying for something that you're using and you need. And just remember that the rent is your highest expense you pay when you're renting a place, whereas the mortgage is like just the beginning. It is just the beginning of costs when you own a house. So kind of escaping that headache and just waiting a little bit of time before you actually buy a house, knowing that's where you're going to be long term, is really important. The last piece of advice is to know what you're going to do with your attending paycheck, your first one. So I was very into money by the end of residency. I had interviewed in my hometown, like I said, found the place that I wanted to work at, and I knew what my salary, my starting salary was $125,000, and which was double what I made in residency, like almost exactly double actually. But not a lot, but still, it was a good place to start when you've been making, a lot less or half of that. But I had it pretty dialed in, how much I was going to save, for my emergency fund, for my first loan payment. And I did, take up I'm going to, eat out every now and then. I'm going to give myself at least $50 to eat out. And I give myself this much money to go to get groceries, so it was a little increase from residency, but it wasn't a huge increase. I advise knowing what you're going to do with that first paycheck to achieve your goals. And my goal was to pay off my loans as quickly as possible. And 3 years to the day was as quickly as I could do it turns out. And that's with, buying a car in cash, because I don't really ever want to have a car payment or owe any money. I bought a Peloton treadmill, like the big one, the $4,000 one, and I bought the Peloton bike as well. So this was like COVID and the year after, so 2020, 2021. So I was still able to do things that I wanted. And yes, I probably could have paid off my loans, a few months faster, but it was still my goal to pay off my loans as quickly as possible with the things that I really love, which exercise is one of them. I definitely, paid to the things that I love and needed in my life, and tried to avoid spending on things that those things that I don't really care about.